Welcome to Wednesday in Westeros. I'm Taylor Trask.
I'm Todd A.
And this is our final episode of season 6, everybody. Well, no, we're going to do a recap too, aren't we?
Yeah, we are discussing the final episode of season 6, but we will do a recap of Wednesday in Westeros.
Yeah, so
maybe on Wednesday.
Yeah, maybe on Wednesday. You're hearing this early because goddamn, there was so much to discuss.
It's Sunday night. Taylor finished the episode about an hour ago, maybe.
Oh God.
And I started it late, and then I kept rewinding parts, which I usually try not to do during the episode. But there were so many parts that I rewound to. So
I was sorely tempted.
I'm still stunned. I still don't even know where we start.
I've said on IO9, one of the first comments I made was, it seems like every week I come here and I say, no, this is the best episode they've ever done. And in all honesty, I can say, as good as season 6 has been, this was like oh God, you couldn't get better than this. There just were so many things, so many satisfying fuck yeah moments. And I think I texted you at least twice. I was like, oh my God, it just kept coming, and usually they reserve like one of those, right? For like any season finale or, big event episode. And it just kept coming and just kept coming. Oh, great. But
if we've learned anything from last week's episode, it's that our fans really love it when we just criticize to death all the tiny illogical things. So let's start out doing that. This is just going to be 90 minutes of Sam.
Yes, of course. Sam, yeah, if we get to the other stuff, we will. But yeah, Sam, man, what's up with Sam this week? I just, this is going
to be the Sam episode.
When he got off that carriage in front of Minas Tirith, I was just, I thought for a moment, I paused it, and I just went, wow, what a journey this guy's had, and Gilly and just everything. It was so amazing.
Yeah, I look forward to his spinoff.
Jesus, let's hope not. Let's talk about the real.
And
the first big fuck moment of the entire thing. I'm going to be liberal with my cursing this week. I just can't even. I'm too excited. We all knew that something was going to go down in King's Landing this week. I had made a prediction that, I think everybody kind of knew Cersei was going to detonate some kind of wildfire device or something. It's so weird.
How did we know that? Why did we? I mean, we talked about that last week and the clues planted and stuff, but I just kept having this thought of okay, did we get this because eagle-eyed readers have been for a while thinking there's a bunch of stuff about her burning it down? I mean, how did we, you and I, settle on that theory?
I think there's a couple of things. One, they've been hinting at wildfire, in King's Landing since season 2, since Tyrion used it against Stannis' fleet. Qyburn was it last episode or the one before? Qyburn sidled up to Cersei in the court and was was like, hey, my little birds have told me that what we think is what the secret is true, or whatever he said.
We were talking. Yeah, he said there's a lot more than they suspected or whatever. But we've been talking about it all season, really.
Yeah. And it's here's the other point. What else was going to happen? There's no way you build with essentially 2 seasons left, or one season split into 2 left, however you want to slice it. What else are you going to do with the High Sparrow? There's so many things that had to happen in so little time. And where else do you take Cersei from here? She wasn't going to go and have a trial and basically confess the same things again, although that did kind of happen ultimately, after the shit went down. So it was kind of it all kind of led up to this. What I didn't anticipate was how breathtaking they were going to shoot it and execute it. And basically what we were treated to was a 20-minute silent movie almost, underscored by this perfect piano and cello instrumentation that just grabbed me and sucked me in, and just the pacing of it and just the mood was very Godfather 2, right? It just the whole thing. I couldn't even, and I have to go back and just rewatch it a second time because I know I missed certain key details. But one of the big things that struck me right off the bat was over Tommen's? Yeah, over Tommen's shoulder when he's sort of getting ready. He's they're putting his crown on and his whatever that weird necklace thing was. You see a shot at King's Landing that I have never seen before. That shows it, but it shows it just it was almost like Vancouver. I never realized it was that much of a bay harbor city. I thought, the Red Keep was facing the ocean, but I didn't realize the whole thing was kind of in this sort of sound. inland sounds. That was just breathtaking to see that shot.
Yeah, there were. We've had a couple of small glimpses. I think maybe I'm just remembering the previews from episodes of the season because I remember that view of the Sept.
Mm-hmm.
But I noticed the same thing, and I promise I'm not jumping us ahead. But when Sam rolls up to the Citadel, whatever the hell that city is called, my brain cannot think of any of these things right now. And even the Winterfell, like watching Melisandre right away, which we'll get to both those things. But there were definitely these huge, expansive views. Of course, you noticed this was directed by our favorite director, Sapochnik, from last week's episode.
From last week, yeah. I noticed as soon as this kicked in, as soon as they started framing this first 20 minutes in the way they did, I was like, oh, man, he's bringing the A game. Like, he's as good as last week was. He's like, and that was my favorite part. So last week was, and since we've had a week to kind of hear everybody's thoughts, I think it's universally pretty much thought of as, one of the top 5, if not the number 1, battle committed to film ever. Right.
Oh, yeah.
The intensity and the visceral nature of it. So for him to go from that tone to like, I'm going to slow this down and I'm going to give you a puzzle box that just unfolds. And I'm going to give you this ballet, this ballet that's going to unfold. I'm actually watching it in the background while we're talking. And the other thing I was going to mention too, the inside shots of the Sept. I've never seen the Sept look so good inside. Like they kind of do that floor to ceiling. You get to see like the big statues, like the Gotham City statues, like holding up the roof or whatever it was. Like just the look of that is gorgeous too.
Man. So are you talking about the 7, like the gods, the statues of the gods? Yeah. They definitely looked much bigger than they have before.
Yeah, and I don't think they've ever shown us that view before.
Yeah, it's funny too because it's become such a central location this season, and last season to some extent too. And they've definitely improved on how they're shooting it or creating it with pixels. But it's funny because so many scenes happened there that we just don't connect with that being that location. I mean, Ned's beheading happens on the steps outside. With the crowd gathered underneath, and of course, like the Jaime raping Cersei at beside the dead body of their son Joffrey happens in that same inside, and I believe there's a part where Joffrey,
all the weddings.
one of them leads Marjorie around. Like I think Joffrey is pointing out the stuff. I can't remember if that's in the Keep or in the.
No, that's in there.
In the Sept.
I think it's in the Sept. Oh no, wait. I think it is in the Keep. But they got married in the Sept. Tyrion and Sansa's wedding I think was in the Sept too. I mean, there's all kinds of Sept shots that we've seen, but nothing like this. Like I'm watching it right now, and there's just these kind of these almost like Dutch tilt shots of the High Septon, and you see like just the gods towering above him, like just the whole thing.
Yeah.
Shot so lit so well, scored so well. And again,
I really like how it's become like it's this location that's so interesting,
Yeah, but I'm right now, so just because I'll rant for hours on this, so I gotta keep it short. But right now I'm watching Loras. Did that because we knew his trial was going to happen too? Did any of that shock you or surprise you?
What was going through my head as that was happening. So we're talking about when Loras was on trial and confessing to his sins. There were several shots to Marjorie, and so I just kept thinking, this is the game that Marjorie has set in motion. This is her little game. She's talked Loras into this, and then I felt like when they carved the 7-pointed star
when they Inglorious Bastarded him, when they Hans Landed him, or whatever you want to call it.
I thought you were referring to Lancel with your note about Inglorious Bastards and the fire. But yeah, so when they carve the 7-pointed star into his head, and she says, "You mutilated him. You promised me you wouldn't do that." I thought like, okay, so she has struck some deal. So that's kind of what I thought. I mean, I definitely didn't think he's sorry he got caught, but I felt like these are not the words of a man converted. These are the words of a man trying to get out of worse punishment.
Well, and it was just shocking that they went that far with it, that they actually and I was surprised that it was an Inglorious Bastard. I thought it was like a brand. I thought they were going to like whip out like a branding iron or something. So when they started carving, I was like, oh God.
There's a shot of Lancel a couple seasons ago where he's carving it in his own head, I believe. So that. But I mean, not to get too far off on that topic, but I did think it was weird that like someone would forcefully carve that into a faith militant's head, because it seems like the whole point of that would be the person voluntarily does it, and that makes them even more hardcore. It's not like a brand. It's like it's like it's the albino in Da Vinci Code who's got all the things carved into him, or it's Nightcrawler from the X-Men who's got the things carved into him.
That's a great point. Yeah, you're right. Actually,
I thought it was going to be self-mutilation.
Maybe that's why it was so off-putting, because it was really uncomfortable, and then just it was a one moment, and then you kind of think too, well, now that he's carved, like, because up to that moment, I was thinking, how are Marjorie and Loris going to get out of this? Because knowing that the sept is probably going to burn down or something, like, how are they going to get out of it?
Yeah.
As soon as Loris was carved, I'm like, oh man, he ain't going to get out of it. And I wonder if Marjorie, like, it started to sink in that, man, this whole thing is a tinderbox ready to go up. And then sure enough, and it's happening right now, as that moment occurs, Marjorie's like, oh shit, something's up here. Like, and she starts to kind of see it. And Cersei's, pouring her wine and everything. And then Marjorie's like, hey, Cersei's not coming. She's not
and her explanation to the High Sparrow was dead on. And it was one of those times where exactly the information that needed to be said was said out loud in a very clear way of like, Cersei knows the ramifications of not being here, and she is still not here. That means she is doing something else. Like, that was so perfectly logical, and it's not a thing we normally see in Game of Thrones,
Well, and that line exposes the High Septon's weakness, which is he gets way too pompous and he loses sight of the bigger of what's going on. Like, he finally has his moment where he's like, yeah, everything's going my way, and he drops his guard too much,
And it was such a good performance from Jonathan Pryce, because so many times while Loris is confessing, you just see this like little smile creep out of Jonathan Pryce's face, like just watching him be, Loris be humiliated. It was just so subtly done that I totally bought it. Like, yeah, he's not going to believe the worst of Cersei at this moment because he's so high on himself, which is another thing we've been saying all along, is that he's not as humble as he appears. He's in this for his own ego anyway, and so
he's bought into his own hubris at this point.
Yeah, exactly.
And then they get Pycelle, one of the little
so two of the little birds. Which was interesting for reasons that we'll touch on a little bit later. I wondered what was going to happen to Pycelle. It's interesting he was dispatched in that way. Did you think that?
A little bit. I honestly didn't think he was. I thought he was being led to safety at first. I thought he was like, they're like, oh, we're gonna keep, he's been loyal enough. We'll put him aside. But as soon as Qyburn showed up, I'm like, oh man, he's done. And then when all the little birds come out of the darkness with their daggers, I was like, Jesus, like what? Well,
there's this obvious
what kind of candy did Qyburn promise them?
Oh man. There's this obvious like parallel between the Lancel and Pycelle like running down into, the underground. Mm-hmm. So I mean, my brain was like, why are these two? What's going on? I didn't. Whereas Pycelle was requested by one of the little birds, who theoretically, I guess, he would have recognized.
Yeah, it might have been like one.
Like he's kind of like, I get it. This is one of the little birds that Varys used to have, or something.
I mean, I would assume that he would have put a couple of them in his employ as well.
I wonder.
They turned on him.
And then, but Lancel I thought was great, because it was like, oh, they obviously like, that kid was seen so that someone would chase him into the catacombs.
Mm-hmm. Oh, surely.
And that one I just thought was really did really exactly what it was supposed to do.
It was really well done, and just the drama of him getting shivved, so that he has to crawl to the wildfire. Because my whole thing was like, how is the wildfire going to detonate? And I'm like, because he's holding the torch, maybe when he falls. But when they get to the wildfire and you see the candles have been dripping down this whole time, I'm like, oh, brilliant! Just God, that's when I started just clapping out loud, just spontaneously, like and that's when I was like, man, Cersei. And you think about it, all of this was of Cersei's design with Qyburn's help, obviously. But you go back to that conversation she had with Elena Terrell, where Elena's just giving her like the blunt, honest truth, like, you're the worst person I ever known. But Elena tells her, she's like, what are you gonna do? Kill everybody yourself? And I'm like, oh God, it's gonna happen. It's absolutely gonna happen. And then Marjorie, and it's happening right now as we're watching. This is kind of a pseudo commentary track.
Well, like I got to back up. We got to back up, and just to hold true to form and criticize everything we can about everything.
All right.
Lancel gets shivved one time, and he's a goner.
I'm gonna say it was like a main
across the narrow sea. Arya can get stabbed repeatedly in the belly and even have it twisted, and she can still jump out of windows and stuff. So obviously, the Faith Milton's training is not as hardcore as Lady Crane's medicine. Like, what if Lady Crane had been there? She could have totally saved Lancel, and this all would have been would have been for naught.
Come with me, you silly boy. She says, is fly out of there. She pulls like an Apocalypse from X-Men, like warps there and like pulls him out. But yeah, he's but I think the way they just showed him like crawling. I wonder if they didn't like slash his Achilles heel or something, like, because he visibly could not walk. He falls and he's like, I can't walk anymore.
It was just the one good stab. I mean, that kid was obviously a trained faceless man.
Let's just hope so. It would be awesome if that kid came around the corner and like pulled off his mask and he was Jack and Hagar. It's like, yes! I would have forgiven everything Jack and Hagar related this season if that had happened. If that kid was like, yep, a man knows no age, and like pulls off the head or the face.
Were you rooting for anyone to get out of the sept once it gets to the point where he's crawling towards the melting candles?
Yeah. So, once Marjorie goes, dude, this is not good. We got to get out of here. Once that happened, I'm like, none of them are going to make it. None of them. So I kind of lost it. I always sort of hoped that Marjorie might have found a way out of there. But as soon as she said that, I'm like, nope, it ain't. They're all done. They're all done. And sure enough, too, when they all start to kind of like push their way out, like she almost, yells fire in a movie theater, and everybody starts to go out towards the doors, and the Faith Militant are like holding them in. Which
is really weird to me, but I'm not going to pick it apart. It's not like Sansa not telling Jon that a whole army was coming to save him. But I did kind of wonder, like, I was like, why are they holding them in? It would just seem weird. But again, Jonathan Pryce's face totally sold it, because that look when he turns around and you see like, oh, now he's worried. Like, what's going on? It was so, and then right when they do the shot where he hears the rumble right as it ignites, that was so perfect. Just the look on his face where it's like he, right in that moment he hears the rumble, and then it's all over.
Yeah. Well, the Faith Militant holding them. I mean, I'm watching. That scene's on right now, and like it fits because up to this point, the Faith Militant's always kind of done like crowd control. To various degrees, like when Cersei was doing her walk and all that kind of stuff. So it makes sense for them to be like, hey, nope, y'all stay here, and then sure enough, Lancel looks into the flame, and I mean, it wasn't even, I didn't even imagine how epic that would be.
I agree. So the first thing you texted me before I had started watching was I just get this text from Taylor that says, holy the fuck. So
that wasn't even for that though. That wasn't. I didn't.
I know. So then when I was watching and this happened, that was what I texted you back and said, I'm just at holy the fuck number one.
Yeah.
But you were not talking about that. But yeah, that. I mean, I remember it being destructive in the Battle of Blackwater Bay, but this was like,
Well, and just the way they shot it like, like the sequential barrels like blowing up under, and then they literally showed the High Septon being like incinerated to nothing, like in a quick 2-second little like frame. And just the whole thing goes, and it was kind of, people often get in trouble for invoking 9/11 too much. And there was a little of that I felt, but it was done. I don't know if it was even intentional, but just the callback to that, the big smoking, thing in the distance, and especially when we call us back to what I thought was the holy the fuck number one, Tommen, just like, and it was gorgeous, and it was what I did not see this coming at all. So Tommen, he's standing at that same shot overlooking King's Landing that I said was so gorgeous in the beginning. Now this big plume of smoke rising up in the distance. It holds on that shot. He exits the frame, and I just thought, oh wow, they're gonna push in and just show that just to underscore how tragic it was. He returns to the frame and just jumps out the window. I was like, oh my god!
Totally quiet. There was no soundtrack, and so that slow. like soundtrack that had been building up in the background is just gone at that point. And
It's like they watched Ex Machina last year and all the things you loved about it. They're like, we're gonna make this 20 minutes that. Like the whole thing was just. I was reminded of your commentary on Ex Machina last year. Just like, oh my god, this is, all this.
Yeah,
is
just
exactly
quiet
right.
and slow, and like that's all the planned leader behind it. Like Cersei quietly planning it and just not letting on what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
Having the mountain block Tommen from going to the trial. Although
Wearing her
the
Darth Vader
Tommen
outfit.
jumping out the window, I totally thought was about to happen.
Really,
And
I did not see that
on it,
coming
and
at all.
just before we started recording, I was telling you why we couldn't actually do a live commentary track was because my when I'm watching HBO Now on my laptop, it'll stutter a couple times and it'll
Mm-hmm.
like just pause itself. And so when I just saw that empty scene with the window, I was like, wait, did it pause? And I
Mm.
like mouse over it to like see if it's moving, and Justin Tomlin walks back into the frame and steps right out the window. But I really thought like we're gonna hear him hurt himself, or we're gonna see like a noose appear or something like that. Like I just thought, yeah,
Yeah,
this is it. I was just convinced like, yeah, this is it. I
I
did not
thought he
think he would
was.
jump out the window,
Yeah,
but I
no.
was not surprised when it happened.
I was
Um,
more thinking he was going to take his crown off and just be like a scared little boy again, and his mom was going to have to, basically be the queen mother in all but name,
I
and
just
just like or in name, in name and fact. No, because it's just the way he did it. It was kind of funny almost, just because it reminded me of the scene from the IT Crowd, which is this comedy, this British comedy,
sure.
where Denham Renholm, like the CEO of the company they all work at, in like one of the episodes, spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, he gets some news that his pension fraud has been discovered, and he's in like a board meeting. He's like, all right, everybody, goodbye. And he like literally just gets up nonchalantly, walks to the window, and just kind of hops out. And it reminded me a lot of that.
Wow.
Just like it was kind of, and it was tragic too, don't get me wrong, but there was just something kind of just sort of all of a sudden about it where he's just like, yep, here I go. And I'm like,
Well,
Jesus,
it was one of those weird moments, and yeah, not to like glorify something that was tragic, because Tommen was like he was a pretty innocent character compared to his brother and
yeah,
certainly his mom and
yeah.
dad and stepdad, or whatever we want to call Robert Baratheon, his adopted father.
Yeah.
He um, but that was one of the things that like kind of like the end of Hodor, where I thought,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, your arc is done,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't need him around. I mean, God, that sounds so cold, but we don't need that character around, like trying to figure it out for a whole season or something.
Yeah, yeah,
It's like
yeah. You're right.
it was cool to see him realize everything that had happened and probably put it all together. And
Mm-hmm.
his mother did this. Obviously, the mountain's the one blocking him from leaving, so he knows his mom's trying to keep him there. The whole thing goes down. It's like he just put it all together. Mom just murdered our whole family and my wife's whole family.
Mm-hmm. Well,
And
it was nice. It was surprising in that I kind of came into this episode going, oh, she's going to go to this trial and blow herself up with everybody in it, and her precious Tommen will go along. Will be in there too, and so she'll just take the whole world down with her. I like
well,
that they were true to her character and saying, no, 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 her self-preservation thing in her head is way too high, and she will find a way to take them all down, and she'll survive. And if
well,
her son goes down too, then fair enough.
in one of the last episodes, we had talked about how Cersei this season just didn't, she just didn't do any good Cersei stuff,
Yeah.
and she had a couple of good conversations with people, but this whole episode, because we're just going to stay on King's Landing and talk about the crowning of Cersei, but that slow scene that they kept kind of checking in on where she's getting dressed, which we finally
Mm-hmm.
see like the finale of it when she's walking to the Iron Throne and she
Mm-hmm.
has the epaulets on and it looks kind of armored and stuff like that. Like that whole thing was just so. I mean, I was like, yes, here is the villain Cersei that we have been missing for 2 years. Finally back. Like I hate to say it, but I was kind of cheering for her. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
you
no,
know,
I was too. I was too.
you know,
And she's basically
either
a supervillain now.
yeah, I
She's
think it was when we were talking about people being redeemed, and it's like I don't think she can be redeemed. Maybe I said it in a different way in our other episode, but she's not like Jamie. Like we've never even though I've felt for Cersei, as a mother, um, I never thought she could be fully redeemed. So it was good to see her just go the other way and be like
Well, and
fully.
that was reaffirmed in her actual what ended up being her real trial with the Septon nun.
Septon Unella, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, does she have a name?
Unella. Yeah, Unella.
Oh no. How do you know that? Is that a book thing?
Yes, but they both, she and Marjorie called her that, and
Okay.
it just sounds like they're saying like uvula or something. Like they're like Septunella, and you're like what? And
That's right.
the High Sparrow calls her that.
Yeah.
He
But
says,
that I mean.
yeah.
Oh, but but it was really, it occurred to me as that scene was progressing, I'm like, oh my God, she got her trial after all, because she's sitting there confessing everything.
Yeah.
And she's like relishing. She's like, and guess what? It feels good. It feels good to fuck my brother. It feels good to kill everybody. It feels good to torture you. How about that? And I'm just like, man, it was almost like her affirmation of like, I am not a good person. And it was kind of a continuation of her discussion with Olenna, where Olenna's like, you're the worst person I've ever met. And I'm beginning to wonder if that was like, if Olenna didn't push her over the edge, right? Maybe Cersei was still kind of clinging to some hope that she could, little finger her way out of all this. And then Olenna's like, you're the worst person ever. What are you gonna do? Kill everybody? Fuck you. Goodbye. And Cersei's like, you know what? I'm gonna take her words to heart, and just kind of like went with it.
Well, yeah. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Well, I was gonna say we get this incredibly satisfying scene that was an echo of last season, which was not. Was it the finale? Was her walk the finale last year?
I think so. No, I think it was the finale.
The finale. So we get this incredible echo of last year, where now she's got the septa, basically in chains. She's like, confess, 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 and then as she's walking out, as the mountain comes in, which is again, I don't think they've ever referred to him as Sir Robert Strong since he was introduced.
Yeah, exactly.
They're like, this is Sir Gregor Clegane. Here he is. He takes off his helmet, which was like, I didn't expect that at all.
Yeah.
And then she's just like, shame, 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 and then you just shut the door. I was fist pumping in the air for Cersei at that moment, because I'm like,
wow,
man, she got everything she wanted. There it is.
Well, so I didn't totally get her rationale, which is a dumb word to use in that moment, for capturing the septa and torturing her.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed a little like, I guess it was all for the confession. That was all like a plot device just to get Cersei to confess to all her sins.
Oh, but come on, she's had it out for the septa. Like, as soon as Robert Strong, quote unquote, was revealed to her after her walk of shame, the first person she thought of in terms of revenge was that bitch. Get it. As soon as I figure out a way to get her, I'm gonna take her. And like, I would have thought that the High Sparrow would be the one that
But yeah, whatever. Like I said, I'm not trying to pick that apart. The other thing that I think we definitely had like predicted, or at least jumped on the bandwagon for, which did not happen, was that wildfire didn't go totally crazy and burn the whole city.
Yeah, true.
There were a couple of scenes of like when the bell comes like crashing through a wall, and you see like the flames sort of lick out and hit a couple of citizens on the street, where it was like, I kind of had that thought of like, oh, holy shit, the whole city is going to catch on fire. But it really was like a bomb. It was not.
I'm glad
it was not a fire.
I'm glad they showed some like casualties too, like like unintended casualties. Like it blew out. It wasn't just it wasn't like a magician's trick where it was just like, hey, in this exact vicinity and nowhere else, like it hit other parts of the city, to the point where when they cut back to it a few times, you could hear still, I think when Jamie even looked on and saw it, there were still people screaming and just like, oh no, say help us. And it was again very, very 9/11-y, and there's been other tragedies too that you could pull from, but just it kind of had that vibe, for better or for worse, that just was like, wow, this is unsettling in some ways.
It was definitely unsettling. Maybe they can I don't want to dwell on that too much, because that just that's frightening. But I think the purpose of that too was at the end of last season, the citizens are lining the streets, throwing feces at Cersei and spitting on her and humiliating her, and at the end of this season, they're all really quietly watching her be coronated.
Yes,
And it was
great.
like
Oh,
I
I didn't
just
even
got
catch
that.
that.
I got that feeling of like that whole room was like, holy fuck, this woman, like, we are afraid of this leader now,
That's a great point. And
And
I
it
was
was
trying
so
to.
chilling when Qyburn was like, protector of the seven kingdoms or whatever, and it was like, fucking A. This is heavy
Clyburn with
shit.
his little hand of the queen pin, by the way. Did you notice that?
I didn't notice that. I mean, I saw that you put it in the notes. There was that great shot where you first see him holding the crown, where I was like, oh
Hmm.
man, they're not even
Yeah.
like, there's no weird, she's
She's the
just going to be the
steward of the
protector.
kingdom.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, no, they're going to just fucking crown her.
Yep.
That was
Yep.
crazy.
It was very much. It reminded me. I mean, I was surprised Kevin Spacey didn't walk in from his House of Cards character and be like, and then like look at the camera or do, because it had that kind of vibe to it where you're like, oh Jesus, like it had that Robin Wright in House of Cards kind of thing where it's like she won, like she won, and I loved every minute of it. I can't.
Yeah, it was. So that we got to touch on Jamie in the
Yeah.
background of that scene of her coronation.
Jamie makes
Where-
it back. And I always thought he'd make it back and she'd be dead. I had all these other theories. What happened was so much more satisfying than anything I had thought of, which is always great to see. But yeah, he sneaks in. He's like, oh, he sees the sept completely in
Yeah.
shambles. He's
Well,
like,
he definitely wasn't. She wasn't going to die because he's going to kill her.
oh, you think so?
I mean, he's the Valancar or
Well,
Valanquar.
what did you think? Well, he'll be the Queen Slayer too. Then, what did you think he was thinking? I mean, because that was the one thing I couldn't get a read on him when he was up in the court area watching, and they made eye contact, and I was like, what are your thoughts on all this? Because like, surely he knows his son's dead by the fact that she's being crowned queen. He knows that. But
there's a kind of funny theme too, not funny, haha, but interesting theme where Jamie always sort of shows up after some shit's gone down in King's Landing, and I feel like we've seen him, kind of over on the side before, like kind of, running his gaze over the crowd, like, what did I miss? And because I guess he's away when Robert dies. And he's does he arrive at Winterfell with them, or I think he arrives later?
No, he shows up. He shows up with the.
Is he in there in the big throng, like in episode 1 or whatever?
Yeah, because remember he comes in and Tyrion's already like at the whorehouse. He's like, oh God, here you are. It's like it was one of those. That's how all those guys were introduced.
Yeah. So it's I definitely think he's eyeing her as like, this is. I just, things have not been right since Joffrey died between them. I don't think. When he, he shows up at the end of that one season with the golden hand.
But they had that moment where it's like, they had that moment where he's like, you're my sister and I don't care. And it's like, was it last season, or it was one of those seasons where they're just like, we're going to do whatever we want now. It was right after Tywin died.
Yeah, maybe I was reading into it, but I felt like they're not, because Jamie helped Tyrion escape, right? I mean, so I felt like he's keeping stuff from her, she's keeping stuff from him. It's not like they've decided to be together, but it's not, everything's not great. I guess like I said, I'm probably just reading into that. So I definitely think that look from him was he knows she is the cause of all of his children's deaths, and just seeing how freaking cold she can be, because I think he understands that, like, taking of life better than she does. Like in a way, he has a better respect and appreciation for it. He's trying to avoid it at River Run and stuff like that. So then he comes back home because Cersei's just flat out set off a bomb and murdered thousands of people.
Yeah.
It was cold. Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think he is. Do you?
Yeah, I got this. If I had to take any, he was playing his cards pretty close to his chest. But if there's anything I got from that, because he didn't like flash her smile, he didn't flash her like an approving nod. It was more just like, oh shit. Like, I think he realized this whole episode was her final transformation into the supervillain of the show. Prior to, think about this, she's the final supervillain before the White Walkers invade. So, like, this was kind of her transformation into that, and I think he finally was like, oh, he didn't know explicitly, but I think he got that vibe off the fact that, again, the whole crowd was hushed. She's the queen. When he left, it was, he's like, I need to stay. I need to protect you. He knew she was kind of in a tough spot. So the fact that he comes back and she's queen, it's like, oh shit, like what am I in for here? You know?
Yeah.
But let's take Jamie as a jumping off point to the twins, because the scene with him and Walder Frey there was only like one or two moments in this entire episode where I was just like, what's happening? And I think that scene was one of them.
We kind of, like, even in the preview, we were like, what the hell is going to happen? Why are they together and saying, the Lannisters and the Freys and their guards and...
Yeah, and it was sort of foreshadowing that Walder Frey isn't as hot stuff as he thinks he is. But it kind of felt like a waste of time compared to everything else, but not in a major, distracting way. It was just kind of like, oh, well, what are we gaining from this?
I guess I could see that. I did when it was just Bronn and Jamie, like, sort of grab-assing. Well, actually, let me back up, because I
actually forgot about that. That's a great.
When Walder Frey was he gives his whole speech about, like, how tough they are, and then when Jamie just puts him in his place, I thought it was like, to me, that was sort of the the minor league equivalent of Olenna putting Cersei in her place. Jamie saying, nobody's afraid of the Freys. Like, you're a joke. Once, like, if the Lannisters have to keep coming to retake Riverrun, then you've never taken it. Like, you are worst. And I thought that was super good. And then, so if we can, and then, if we want to jump to the grab-assing.
Let's do.
Yeah, I thought.
Let's jump there.
When I was watching it, and there was this woman that kept eyeing Jamie Lannister, my thought was, well, thank God, here's Arya come to kill them all.
Oh, interesting. You saw that early on. Wow.
And I guess you didn't see that coming. So
dude, that was my second. That gave you like
a
fuck. That was my second, because I wasn't even expecting that in the slightest, honestly. And I don't know why. Maybe I'm just slow, but I thought surely they'll put her off until next season, and she'll have some kind of. I thought that was going to come much later. So the fact that happened already was like, that shows how aggressively they're plotting forward. Not plotting forward, charging forward.
Yeah. Well, we had kind of guessed that. You didn't share in this. I think you scoffed at the idea that I said she could make it to Winterfell before the Battle of the Bastards. Like,
dude, she almost did.
Ramsay.
The twins.
I know.
She practically could have.
So, it kind of begs the question of, like, how fast Daenerys' ships can get there.
Well.
I hope they just take the summer and then they're there.
No, we'll get to this. But somebody in Io and I made a great point when I scoffed at the fact that Varys was already back in Marine to sail on the ships again. They're like, it's called the Narrow Sea, not the incredibly long takes a year to get there.
Yeah.
I'm like, fair enough. So,
Yeah, well, it's just so funny because it's like, how long does it take Sam to get somewhere or whatever? But yeah, so Arya made it back pretty quick, and I didn't go, that's Arya as soon as she served the wine to them, but there was a point where Jamie, like, literally this was one of the points where I rewound it, where Jamie just sort of distractedly looks at her and she's giving him this meaningful glance, like, after Bronn has gone away.
Was that still Arya? Was that Arya as?
Yeah, and that was the moment where I was like, oh, that's Arya. Like, that's why that girl is staring at him, because that's Arya.
Think of that. Jesus, that went right over my head. I was so bamboozled by the. Not at all. No, I was so bamboozled.
The girl that like served them the wine and
not at all.
Yeah, and Bronn says, like, you don't even have to try. You're just the steak, and they're all the little birds pecking at you or whatever. And yeah,
I remember that. That never.
That was the same girl that serves the pie to Walder. So then I got to mention that the Walder Frey pie thing is this awesome payoff for readers, because there's a secret. Not secret, but there's a fan theory that's one of those other things that George Martin has not written directly in the books. It's like he's just kind of written around it, where Lord Manderley, or Wyman Manderley.
Who is that?
Well, he's the white-bearded dude that says King in the North first and puts his sword down. But that when he goes to the Bolton's wedding in the books, Walder Frey also goes to the, like, sorry, when Ramsay marries Arya, the Jane Poole disguised as Arya Stark, the Freys go to that wedding at Winterfell, and Manderley serves this pie, and book readers there's been this theory that baked into the pie were his sons, because Manderley had made all these comments about how like he was going, like he knew where the sons were, and he was going to have them killed and bring a special gift to Walder Frey, which would it would return in kind his breaking of the guest right, which is when Catelyn asks to be served some food. That's like asking to be protected under the guest right. Like if you serve your guests food, you're not supposed to kill them or anything. They're under your protection. So in the Red Wedding, when she asks if they can have some food and drink, it's supposed to protect them. And then Walder Frey breaks that vow. So the whole pie thing was supposed to be, like in the books, is like, oh, we're going to get him back for breaking the guest right by serving him food that his sons are in. So when Arya did that,
I thought it was rewarding for fans of the show South Park, because she totally Scott Timmerman his ass and fed his own kids to him at a chili con carnival, and it was like, I am the last person you're ever going to see, Scott Timmerman. Goodbye. And it was the fact that she pulled it that way was so. And to tell you how freaking not ready for this I was, when she's sitting there and he's like, "Where are my sons?" She's like, "They're already here." And I was like, where are they? And I thought, are they hiding out? Are they going to come out and kill him now? It's like, is that what?
I was thinking that same thing.
I'm like, what's going? And then she's like, they are here. I was like, what is happening right now? And it didn't even I'm smarter than this. Why the hell didn't I see this coming at all? It was such a nice moment though, because that was my second holy the fuck to you on the phone. I was just like, what the Jesus? When did this happen? Talking about the Manderleys though, let's go to the north next, because that was. I think if we were going to rate sections of King's Landing in terms of how cool they were, I think the North was probably the second in my book, just in terms of how much cool stuff went down. It was really nice, by the way, seeing the wolf sigil in the opening credits again after 3 seasons of the Flayed Man. On there was just really I was looking forward to them. Like, are they going to show? Oh, they did, and it wasn't burning down anymore. It was kind of nice.
Right.
Did you expect the scene? Well, let me rewind. I was very grateful the season didn't end before we got one final sort of kick-ass moment from Lady Mormont.
Oh man, no kidding.
I was a little bit worried after last season or last episode. I was like, man, she didn't have anything to say. Yeah, her resting bitch face to Ramsay was priceless, but she didn't say anything else. And good Lord. So the fact that she's the one who's like, listen, all you assholes, none of you were here when we had to fight. So you all better step up now. And then my favorite line was when Lord Manderley goes, he kind of stands up and he's just like, Lady Mormont speaks harshly, but truly. And I'm just like, that sums her up. I want that on the t-shirt for my next Comic-Con, because that
was so good. Yeah, I mean, I really was hoping for a Queen in the North moment there. That would have been great.
They're like, well, why the hell are we following this guy? Her, Lady Mormont. Yes. No, but did you expect that? And was it? I was a little bit, I read that other people were like, this was the best moment of the show. I'm like, yeah, but I kind of felt a little bit of dread just because the last time we heard a bunch of people shouting King of the North.
Yeah, wasn't that scary?
Did not go well at all.
Right. That was really weird because it totally echoed that scene of everyone cheering it to Rob. And because of the cuts in the scene, because we're just taking the geography of the place and discussing each geographical location, not the order of the episode, there were the scenes between Jon and Sansa, and Sansa and Littlefinger. Sansa saying the White Raven had arrived, and so winter is here. And
which, by the way, that's like 4 episodes late. Pycelle said that like in episode season goddamn 2. Remember they're sitting there at the small council, and he's like, and that concludes the longest spring we ever had, everybody. Great job. That was like, I thought that was already established. Like, what the hell?
Yeah, I guess it's coming for a while, and then winter is here.
Yeah, which I love that too. And Sansa's like, well, or was it Jon or Sansa's like, our father's been promising us for this whole time,
Yeah. So we had that scene first, then we have Bran's flashback where which did you? I mean, were you into this?
I
This
thought it was
flashback?
rushed, man. I was really surprised that we, as many
Oh,
kick-ass brand things we've had this season, our final look at him was, oh, and here you go, and I was kind of wanting more with Benjen, just more.
yeah, that was the part I thought was rushed.
I thought,
But
he was gone for so long. Let's spend a little more time with him and learn about what he's seen and been through. But the fact
yeah,
that he drops him off, not even at the wall, like he drops him off at the freaking wirewood tree or weirwood tree or whatever,
yeah.
and then Brand's just like, oh, I got to do this, and
Well,
it wasn't even to be like, oh, I got to see where my family is or what's been going on. Oh, I got to go back to that thing that the Raven said not to look at. I got to do that real quick. And I'm just like, really? That's what we're gonna like just jump to inexplicably, I guess.
that's funny because I see in the show story plot how that doesn't make sense. Like, why would he do this now? Why wouldn't he like, sort of peep to see where the White Walkers are?
Yeah, yeah.
But in the viewer logic of what the hell ever happened in that tower, like that's exactly where. I mean, not that I thought he was going
Oh,
to
I
go
get
there,
it.
but when it went to it, I was like, thank God we're going to have some resolution on this. But before that, Benjen did explain that magic in the wall, which we talked about several
Yeah,
episodes ago.
yeah.
So that was super gratifying to me to know that is in the show. It's that the rules have now been established, and we don't know if once Bran crosses, it'll bring the White Walkers in because because he's been marked by the Night King or what.
Do you imagine a scene next season where Sam, because the only reason for Sam to exist as a character is to discover shit about the White Walkers. I've decided. Like, there's no other reason. They may try to string Gilly along, but like the only reason he's there is to learn stuff. Do you imagine a scene next season where he's in that massive kick-ass, Hogwartian library, and like he reads something about the magic of the wall, juxtaposed to Bran crossing the wall, which is what would allow or maybe he finds out about the Horn of Winter or something. But like, I feel like we didn't get it. And I was a little premature to suggest we might get the wall falling down this season. That was kind of silly of me, but I think the Ned's head next season is going to be that. I think that's, I'm serious,
Well,
because where else you go, and they've got to start raising the stakes. And for the record, I really want to see the wall crumbled, the model wall crumbled in the opening sequence. I think that would be shocking,
Well, should we talk crackpot theories?
Of
Because
course.
I love the idea that that's Sam's purpose in the show is to find something in the Hogwarts library, and go. I knew it, like or whatever. This makes so much sense. It puts it all together, and then he's got somehow to inform John, who is probably in the throes of battle at that moment, of what's going on. But I'm wondering if it's going to be tied to the Bran the Builder theory, which I can't believe I had not heard about this until last night when a friend was telling me. In that big coffee table book you got, The World of Ice and Fire, apparently there is a drawing of Bran the Builder, who built the wall, of course, infused it with its magic, also built Winterfell and not Dragonstone, but Storm's End or something. So we assume those castles and that wall are magic to keep the White Walkers out. But there's a picture of him in that book in a litter, like being carried, where he has no use of his legs. And we know all about how Bran time travels because
Okay, what the hell? I gotta go look at this
loops into Hodor, and we see even in this episode where they call back again to Ned hearing him call out, when Bran is viewing that scene at the Tower of Joy. So is it possible that Bran, the younger that we know, is Bran the Builder from before, and that this is Matthew McConaughey from the first season of oh shit, whatever that show is, where he's time is a flat circle. No, the the HBO series.
True Detective.
Yeah, True Detective. Where it's time is a flat circle, and Bran back in time built this wall when he was a cripple and infused it with his magic, and then he loops back in time himself and crosses the wall, even though he's been marked by the Night King. So they're able to take the wall down. So he has to go back in time and loop.
Did you know there's a Brandon the Builder and Brandon the Breaker? I didn't know there was a Brandon the Breaker.
I didn't know anything about this.
Yeah, so. Page 145. This is in the World of Ice and Fire. I'll have to look this up as we go.
I wonder it would be so satisfying if George Martin weren't able to sort of finish those books Oh man, I'll tell you one thing. So Joanna Robinson has a crackpot theory. I love this crackpot theory, which is George Martin has already written both books, Winds of Winter and Dream of Spring, and they're ready to go. And he was just simply waiting for this season to end, and then they're going to
No.
put both of them out. I was like, man, that's a great crackpot theory.
No, there's
But
no way.
I got
There's
another
no way
crackpot.
his publisher would have never gone for that. I can't. There's no way.
My crackpot theory is, wouldn't it be amazing if we all went back to World of Ice and Fire and maybe like the Dunk and Egg stories, and we find out that all the pieces are there, and he doesn't even have to write the next two books?
I'll tell you this: if you
Actually
haven't
already
picked up the
explained
World
it.
of Ice and Fire, go do it. Because Jesus, it's for somebody who didn't read the books, who's just enjoyed the show the whole time. It's the perfect companion. It fills in all the gaps of everything. It makes the show watching richer. And it's a cool ass book. Like, it's illustrated. It's
It looks amazing.
It's sort of, they tee it up like it's an actual book in the Citadel and Old Town that you find, and it's like the whole thing is really cool.
So we in that scene in the Tower of Joy, we finally see the "Promise Me, Ned" moment, where the only thing I was frustrated by, and I rewound it like 10 times, was when she leans over to Ned and for some reason decides to whisper one little thing to him.
What the fuck?
And not like, and everything else she just says so that Bran can hear it. And apparently he heard the whispers because there was an expression on his face. But I rewound that over and over again, and she says something like, "His name is," and then it like goes away, and it did not sound at all like Rhaegar.
Yeah, but it's not like, no, it's gonna be, but it's not like her midwives weren't up, didn't know what's up. Like, everybody's in that building, in that structure, knew what was going on. They knew who they were protecting. They knew what was going on. So it's like the fact that she would whisper it to him was so weird. I'm like, what? Yeah. You're revealing this to the audience. Like, don't whisper it. Come on.
Well,
man.
Is it possible? I just don't even know. Like, is it possible it's somebody that's not Rhaegar? I don't know.
Who else would it be, though?
Because I think everyone's assumed it was Rhaegar because the rumor that Robert put out there was Rhaegar kidnapped her and took her to this tower.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it was.
It's gonna be Rhaegar. I was a little bit annoyed they weren't more deliberate with it, though. Like, all they did was transition.
It's like, if you're gonna go to this scene, like, just be deliberate about everything.
But they transitioned the face to John's face, so they answered it, but they kind of didn't. It was almost like, why are you masking this more than it needs to be? But again, the fact they showed it was enough.
All I could think of, and the reason that we went on this detour to that flashback was because we were talking about the scene where they're saying "King in the North," just echoing what they did to Robb, and I was thinking, wow, we just watched something that showed pretty much that he was not not in any way a legitimate king in the North.
Well, and Littlefinger was in the background, kind of looking on, like, angry, like, oh, you damn it.
Yeah, because if anyone knows. Like, he knows. And Littlefinger said to Sansa earlier, he said, wasn't it Littlefinger that said to her, like, do we want a true-born child of the Starks who's born in the North, or do they want a bastard who was born in the South? Wasn't that Littlefinger that said that?
Yeah. No, in fact, that scene, I have the episode going on, that scene is literally happening as we speak.
Yeah, so anyway, I brought that up just to say, like, that King of the North scene was, there was a great subtext there of, like, where it goes to his face, and they've picked their king in the North, and it's like, we've just learned he literally can't be the legitimate king of the North. So
I think that what they're teeing up is there's going to be the kind of the arc of next season is King's Landing versus Daenerys versus and somehow I think Winterfell is going to be part of that. And it'll probably be like some big battle of the 4 armies or battle of the five armies or something like that. And then the big sort of uniting moment is the wall falls down and everybody's like, oh shit. And then everybody realizes we all got to team up. And
well, I don't know that the North is going to bother with the South at all.
You think? But with Littlefinger there, if he's pledged himself and Cersei's on a vendetta, she's going to come from him. He's the only one left on her shit list who is still...
the South may come for the North.
Yeah.
And then find themselves in the shit when the wall comes down or whatever happens. But yeah. So what about that Melisandre scene? I mean, what were your feelings on that?
I mean, I'm glad it happened. I'm glad Davos finally confronted her. I did like seeing some different emotion from Davos for once, instead of just like, you know, earnest support for all things he sees and hears. It was just like, oh, he actually is for once showing something else. Like, I don't even remember back when his son died, because remember he had a kid at one point who died when Stannis, in season 2 when Stannis attacked. I don't remember him even showing much emotion then afterwards, other than, oh shit, everybody died but me. Well, I guess.
And it's funny too, because not funny, haha, but they could have that would have actually made it stronger if he had brought up his son in the scene.
Yeah,
he didn't, did he?
No, not
because his son was a follower of Melisandre's.
Yeah.
And died because he bought into all that Lord of Light crap and thought Stannis was Azor Ahai. And in fact, in the books, I think he has like 7 sons that all die or something.
I was really hoping he would have either killed her or made an attempt at her, and Jon had to basically put him in the stockade, or put him in the jail to cool down for a little while, or something. It
definitely seemed like just an exposition scene so that they could get her away from Winterfell, but point out that she will have a role to play in the war to come. So
she totally will. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go on to real quick, going back to the most important character of all season 6, Samwell Hurley himself. Again, wouldn't it have been so much cooler if we hadn't seen him at all this season, except for this episode, and they flash? If we could have seen Minas Tirith and everything they showed us, but they flash on him in Old Town, like already like in Maester College, like going through they could have shown us the library, the whole thing, but he's like researching shit. And one of the things he discovers is something about the White Walkers that tees up next season. Wouldn't that have been so much better? But instead it was like, hey, Gilly, and then you get this whole thing where this wagon drops him off like 5 miles from freaking Old Town just so they can see it from a distance, I guess. It's like, why didn't you take him all the way to the town? That was a little bizarre, but they, and so they're there, they're looking at it. He walks in. I will admit though, I did like the scene with the receptionist Maester. That dude, that actor is my other favorite new face besides Lady Mormont this season, just because he was so like, you could just tell he's like, excuse me, like you could have shot that scene in like the 1980s and that character would have been the same guy, right?
I swear this director is just leagues above some of the other directors we've seen for Game of Thrones, because in both these last 2 episodes we've seen stuff that's been funny for the show, but it's not like corny. Where in other episodes when we see something corny, we just kind of groan, like it's like, oh, you just broke us out of the moment. But like that guy was really funny, I thought. I mean, it was just even when he like opens the book and like puts his finger down and scrolls down the page and is like, this says Jeor Mormont is the Lord Commander. It's just like, the sort of slow, bureaucratic way that he's going to contradict this, this guy that just showed up at his door. I thought was, that was just perfect. It was very amusing.
Then when he was like, "No women and children," good grief! It's just like they walked off. I was like, "Oh man, this is." But I mean, what did you think of the? What did you think of the Hogwarts library? Was that? I mean, it was cool to see. I mean, was it necessary? Did we need to spend 10 minutes?
Didn't you know what was going to happen? That was kind of how I felt. Of like, oh yeah, Sam loves books, and he's going to leave him in the library, and he's going to find out that this library is the whole, like, it's going to be as big as the building itself or something. I knew, not that I knew it would just go up. I just thought like he's going to see so many books he's never seen, and I really thought there was something else coming. I really thought like, well, that other guy's going to come and talk about the discrepancies in the, in the record with Sam or something. It was just weird that he glimpses up, and then of course, not that I disagree with the Minas Tirith, or what's that place
Minas
called? Tirith. But I'm going to say I think it's Barad-dûr. Like this is Sauron's tower with the flame, little smoke at the top.
pre Sauron Barad-dûr, where it's just like when everything was good. And
all the birds flying in.
So that was a little obnoxious. I mean, I wish that was, because it would have been cooler to have been like, oh, that's right, Sam exists, and like just to see, oh, here's where you. But instead, we wasted. I think the only sour note of this whole season has been anything Sam related, where it's just like, oh.
Has he only been in these 2 episodes though? The Downton Tarleys and then this one.
Downton Tarleys, yeah. No, it was Downton Tarleys. It was this, and then there was that one of him and Gilly on the boat. Remember, like episode 2 or 3. Where it's like, hey, we're on a boat and we're sailing and we don't. Biggest waste of time, I think, for the entire show.
Now, see, it would have been interesting if maybe I'm remembering this wrong from the books, but I believe that Maester Aemon dies on that boat trip, and I believe they just put him in a barrel. So it would have been interesting if he had come into Barad-dûr rolling this barrel, And they're like, it says here that Meister Aemon is the Meister of Castle Black, and he's like, actually, he's right here, and he just cracks it open and rolls him out.
The other thing that was, the other sort of waste of time this season has been anything Dorne related. I was joking though, like, well, and I was gonna say like they should take Dorne out of the opening credits and just put like Diana Riggs headshot, because it seems like anytime Elena Terrell goes anywhere, like she owns that place so much, like we don't even need this. Who cares where it is? And so we finally get a shot of Dorne. I think this is the only time since episode 1, right, where we've seen Dorne.
Yeah. They come in, they kill Doran, and then we don't see him.
We don't see him, and so like when they showed Dorne in the opening credits, I'm like, oh god, of course, and I was like, I wasn't surprised, but I was like, what are we gonna do there? So when you flash on Elena Terrell there, I'm like, oh man, this is gonna go well. And sure enough, in like 30 seconds, she dispatches all the sand snakes. Like, you're an idiot, you shut up. Are you gonna say anything? Nope, good. And just like it was perfect. It made me want I want a spin-off so badly of her and Lady Mormont, like just trolling around. In fact, if there's not one scene before this whole show's over of Lady Mormont and Elena Terrell trading barbs or something, it'll be a waste.
I know.
We got to get one of those things. Were you surprised to see Varys step in from the shadows?
I was surprised that Olenna was there at all, which was, I mean, it instantly made sense to me. Well, first of all, it made sense in, superhero logic, in the fact that like some bird had to fly from King's Landing. Which, first of all, why would anyone in King's Landing send a bird to tell Dorne that that Cersei had murdered all of the Tyrells? It just seemed weird that she had that information.
I think Olenna gave that to her. I don't think she knew that from King's Landing. I think they had invited Olenna Terrell, independent of that. And she's like, oh, by the way, Cersei just murdered everybody. It's like, oh, okay. Well, she says it out loud right there in that meeting. Like, she tells them like everything's gone. Everything. I mean,
yeah. Well, but I mean, just the fact that Olenna would even know. I mean, why? It's just like the North didn't even know that winter was there.
They've had other things on their mind.
It took that other bird like 3 seasons to fly up to the Winterfell.
They had a penis-cutting bastard they had to deal with.
I'm fine with the idea that like, oh, this scene, this was like weeks later or something. Like, it's just not in. It doesn't all happen on the same day or whatever. Like, don't pick it apart. It was just kind of like Theon and Yara just standing before Daenerys last episode, and you're like, wait, what the? Like, we don't see Olenna travel or anything. So to me, it was like, wait, that's who they're talking to? Because as that shot zooms in over the water, like over the pond in front of them, you hear Olenna's voice. You're like, wait a second. At least that's what that was the part that shocked me.
She's in her mourning garb. That was kind of fun to see her just in all black. Like, I've lost everything. And it was fun to see her show grief. Like, that's how she expresses grief. Yeah. It's like, I don't have a future. My son's dead. My granddaughter's dead. My grandson's dead. So fuck the world. I don't care.
Well, the whole house Tyrell is gone. And I was just surprised that she was still in the show, like just kind of viewer-wise, because I really thought like, oh, we've seen the last of her. She's gone.
No. Diana Riggs.
I know she's too good, but I thought that point of her telling Cersei off, like literally telling her everything that's on her mind, I thought it was like, give her the one good scene, and then that's it. We don't see.
That was her mic drop moment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the Varys inclusion is cool because he's kind of running. He's sort of like Littlefinger. He's running some like long con in the books, which is really weird. And I could be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure that when he leaves Tyrion in Slaver's Bay or wherever he ends up over there, like when he abandons that quest and goes back to Westeros, he murders Pycelle and Sir Kevin. So he's still like kind of usurping the Lannisters, because he's the one that's running the whole game with Aegon the Younger.
Who exists in the books only, not in the show.
Yeah, exactly. So kind of like the pies that Arya served Walder and a couple other references. I was like, okay, good to bring Varys in here, and so that we don't have to deal with like another subplot of what he's after,
Yeah, yeah.
and and make him fully part of this, which makes sense because he wants Daenerys on the throne.
Yeah, it was interesting, and I guess we can kind of cut to Daenerys and Meereen. Did you? The only other sort of sour note in this episode was the fact that Varys appears on the flagship heading to Westeros, having just been in Dorne. I was like, so he rode all the way back to Meereen to then get on a ship to then go back to Westeros. Somebody pointed out though that one of the ships or a couple of the ships had the Tyrell sigil and the Dornish sigil. I didn't catch that. Does
Wait,
that
where? In Meereen?
I don't know. Yeah, at the very end, when all the ships are heading across the Narrow Sea, somebody's like, "Oh no, I thought I caught the rose on one, or the Dornish insignia on one of the ships, and then like the rose on one of the ships. So maybe he brought ships with him. I didn't catch any of that.
I don't think that's the case. I'm gonna call bullshit on that.
Yeah, I have to go back and rewatch that. That was the only weird. That was the only off-putting moment. Where I'm like, why is he there? Like, can't they just get him when they're headed over? But what do you think? Do you think it's reasonable or smart for Daenerys to be partnering with the Dornish for any reason? I mean, does she need them? Like, what's the gain for her there?
I've always thought the reason that she's partnering with the Dornish, well, see, again, it's one of those weird things that like the way the show has gotten there is weird a little bit. So it's good to hear a viewer's perspective because now was Aegon? No. Oh man. Doran has been, like in the books, he's run one of those plots of like he's sent one of his kids over to Daenerys to try to wed her.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So they're basically bringing that in. So I assume this is kind of one of those things where George Martin said, well, yeah, then Daenerys will ally with the Dornish, and they will lead the sack on King's Landing, and then like it's probably like the chess piece moves. The big ones have to still be made. So that's why they kind of had to keep the Dornish around. Was just for that.
If I was Daenerys, and I'd be like, hey, these motherfuckers just killed their own king, killed their own prince. How the hell do I expect them to be loyal to me? Other than the fact that they're women, but that shouldn't be all that she needs to. Even though she sort of threw Yara some.
Yeah, I think that's her whole qualification at this point.
She's like, "Are you a hot woman? You're on my team." It's just kind of, I hate to reduce it.
But it's it's the enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of.
Yeah, fair enough.
Thing I think. At least it doesn't. I mean, when the sand snakes were introduced, both times we were like, "Oh, they're going to do something really badass," and then both fights they were in were like, well, that was pretty lackluster.
Yeah.
So
not all that. And I remember too when they were introduced, like what was it, 2 seasons ago or a season ago? Like everybody was like, "Oh, the sand snakes are coming! Oh, get ready, everybody! This is going to be badass!" And then it was just kind of like nothing.
They're gonna chop Myrcella's ear off and all this other crazy stuff.
Hey, by the way, while I'm on that note too, one thing I didn't mention, going back to Arya for a split second. I was saying that Sansa had kind of taken on the Lady Stoneheart, sort of moniker unofficially. I think Arya has proven she is Lady Stoneheart from this point forward.
Yeah, I think so.
That the delivering of that vengeance and the fact that she's back in Westeros. What else? What is she gonna do besides run around just delivering vengeance, going off whoever's left on her list? Cersei's still on her list, but let's remember that. I think that is, and I'm so glad too. I'm so glad we finally put that to bed. And it's cool to see Sansa, but probably more Arya taking that on. But just I want to throw that out there.
I think that's a good role for Arya. I don't know. It sounds cool. Plus, it gives her an opening to like run into her old pal, the Hound, and Beric Dondarrion as they're on their way north. Yeah. So
going back to Daenerys though, it was. I didn't think I would. I've been kind of angry at Tyrion since he's shown up there because it seems like, and I got a lot of hate on IO9 for saying that Tyrion has not been very smart since he's been in Meereen. A lot of the stuff he's done has been pretty stupid. But that being said, I still almost teared up a little bit when Daenerys gave him his own hand pin. I was like, "Aw, man!" Just to see him back. And that was underscored a little bit by just the fact that his sister is queen now. So like, they're going to attack his family directly, in a way that, would he have been as on board if it was Tommen, now that it's just Cersei, and after he learns what she's done, what's he gonna think? It's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, it's it's definitely like, there's sort of that powerful moment as a viewer, like where we like Tyrion and we're like, oh man, he's gonna be hand of the queen for someone he really believes in, and not sort of the cynical, hand of the king that he was before, where he's pushing Joffrey around. But then on the other hand, it's like, yeah, but doesn't she have better advisors? I mean, like, isn't Missandei like a much better advisor? Or, but
there's
whatever.
There's a little bit of the Davos syndrome going on there, because he doesn't think about this. He only just showed up before she got whisked away after Drogon took her away.
He had like one scene with her.
Yeah, he doesn't really know her that well, but yet he still kind of has this like puppy dog love for her. I'm just like, why? Like, why? And the same reason that Davos, fawns over Jon Snow after barely knowing him. I'm like, why is Tyrion? And maybe it's just the fact that he had nothing else. So it's like, I'm gonna give this a go and go all in, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, all we can imagine is that like maybe Varys like had a big long heart-to-heart off screen with him about the Blackfire plot or whatever,
and then said nothing ever again.
We never saw it on on screen.
I think this is the first time Varys has spoken since episode 1. No, I guess he spoke.
Well, no, he spoke to tell him he was leaving.
Yeah,
I mean, you show in the preview where he's like, if I'm not, if I don't come back, it didn't work.
For one of the most eloquent characters, it was just weird to see him.
It is weird.
Be like, I'm not going to say much at all. I'm just going to react confused and baffled when things happen. So
he definitely like disappears in the books a lot. So but back to your point about like, so I just noticed in the notes that you had written that thing about like, how did Varys get back? I mean, we were in agreement. He didn't come back to Marine. Like, he's in Dorne. I think some Marine.
No, but he goes back to Marine then to get on the ships to then come back to Westeros.
But he's not on a ship.
Yeah, at the very end, he's standing there with Daenerys and her main crew on the flagship.
That's
pans. No. Varys is back there. Go rewind it. I just saw it again. Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. Like, the people on IO9 were like, oh, he's there because
is crazy.
Some of the ships were Dornish ships or Tyrell ships, so he must have sent the ships there, and then he just rounded. But I'm like, why would they not just sort of? Why would he go all the way back to Marine, which is what this leads us to believe?
Well, maybe he didn't go all the way back. Maybe they just met them in the middle of the sea and were picking up, where they're already in the middle.
But, I guess, but no, I'm watching right now.
He is on that ship. I did not even notice that.
Yeah, he's standing next to Missandei.
Oh my God! No, I just saw that.
It's so weird.
I rewound it and saw those yellow sails, which I assumed were Tyrell or Dornish or something. But yeah, I didn't even notice that last scene. There's a shot where it's just he's right over the shoulder of Daenerys, and I didn't even put that together.
While you're watching that, what's the sigil when it first shows that scene? What does Theon look up at? Is that the Sand Snake?
It's the Kraken.
Okay.
I believe, yeah. Like, he looks up at like sort of a thin little triangular sigil, and yeah, I think that's the Greyjoy one.
Okay, cool.
And then there's definitely like, the Targaryen ones that we see, and there's the yellow one, which I think may have.
That's the Dornish one.
Well, I'm wondering if it's the if it's the Tyrell one. I can't really tell if it's the Rose, which is the growing strong Tyrell one.
Yeah.
I don't know what the Dornish one is. Probably just like a lady holding a spear or something. Is it a snake?
Yeah, it is a snake. I thought
that would make sense.
Anywho, so I think, does that it's a little cliche at this point to have, to end an episode with or end a season with like a kick-ass Daenerys moment, but honestly, it was really cool to finally see them
I'll disagree with that. Because I don't think it's cliche. I think historically, the last episode is super frustrating, especially last season, but in many, many other seasons past, because it's all cliffhangers about where's this character going to go? Or we don't see the death on screen or whatever. And this one was super satisfying from the beginning of the episode to the end. And to me, this episode and the last episode are just one long movie.
Yeah.
And the movie makes so much more sense as one big piece than two episodes, you know?
You're
and
right.
even
This is the first time I have felt maybe in this entire show that I can wait a year, and when it picks back up again, it's like, and they could almost, honestly, they're probably not gonna, but they could pick up next season having, the invasion has begun, and we just sort of drop in on it.
I
Like,
agree.
It feels like, okay, this was a beautiful bow on. I mean, season 6 was pretty much damn near perfect start to finish, but this was like the most perfect bow on that box.
Yeah,
just that shot of all those ships, and just like, oh, shit is happening, but has happened. And so we can kind of just close that going. It's like closing a great book going, cool, I can't wait for the next one.
Well, and it's the argument that, like, last season and whenever I brought up that stuff about the Film Crit Hulk's review of the books, and one of the things he said was, like, cliffhangers work week to week, but, like, season to season, they're just infuriating. And
Walking Dead.
Well, I was just about to say, like, that is all I heard from my friends who watched Walking Dead this season. Was I heard so many of the same reactions I heard from Game of Thrones viewers last season, which is, I'm never watching that again. Like, I'm done with it. And this whole season of Game of Thrones, because it hasn't pulled shit like that, has been amazing, And just a nitpick on that, there's that moment where Sansa says to Jon, I'm sorry I didn't tell you about contacting Littlefinger and whatever, and then he brings up, like, it's a thing about trust. We have to trust each other. And it didn't totally satisfy me, because just a moment earlier they talked about somebody being responsible for a whole bunch of deaths, and I was like, huh. But they did, it was one of those things where it's like, man, you couldn't have had some similar conversation like that before the battle started or something.
Yeah, I'm going to cut her slack. I've seen that argued since last week as well. I'm still going to cut her slack in that she did not know if the Veil was going to show up at all, if she had called, and then more importantly, she didn't know. Like, imagine this: if you go back and rewatch last week's episode, Battle of the Bastards, she's talking to Jon, and she's seeing Jon, with having these logistics meetings, and she's like, "Hey, you're planning all this. You could ask me for my counsel." I think somewhere in that, nervousness got the better of her, and she's like, shit, he knows what he's doing. If I say this now, and instead, I mean, she could have literally just said, hey, hey, I have a plan as well. But she's like, hey, do you want my counsel? I mean, she was it was almost like she's like, here's this warrior who knows what he's doing. I might screw this all up if I say anything.
Our regular listener, Brian, argued that with me, like, how else could this have gone? And my suggestion was she could have told him in that moment, and we could have seen Jon just unleash on her and been like, God damn it, why didn't you tell me this earlier? This is really fucking important, Sansa. You have fucked up everything. I've got these armies ready to fight, and the snow is coming, winter's coming. Yeah. And maybe Jon says, you know what, let's hold back as long as we can. Let's hold out and see if the nights come. And then it starts snowing, and they're like, shit, we got to go. And the whole thing plays out exactly the same, except we feel like, okay, Sansa's not responsible for the deaths of all these men. That
okay,
she did at least try to warn him, and we still get the kick of Jon yelling at her and saying that was a dumb thing you did. You can't withhold information like that, because withholding information is just so aggravating and tropey to me. But
yeah, well, and we also get the satisfaction of, I mean, you're right. It would have played out. The Veil could have showed up when they showed up, but it would have been fun for the viewer to be like, oh, they're not showing up, and then they do. That would have been. Yeah,
it almost would have lent that, like, that surprise a little bit more.
Yeah, I'll give you that. Yeah. I'll give you that. No, that's.
But yeah, let's not relitigate things.
That's what we'll call next. The next time we do this podcast, like relitigating Game of Thrones.
That'll be the summary episode where we talk about the whole season, relitigating season 6.
Yeah. Well, let's. I don't want to short circuit that episode, because we are. If you're still listening, we are going to do a big recap episode of all.
Yeah, on the whole season. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think there's so much to digest and kind of get us excited for next season. Before we call it a year on Wednesday in Westeros. Any final thoughts on this glorious gem of an episode, of a finale?
No, I think. My thoughts are very positive. Like, they did everything in this season that they should have done in the last 2 seasons, and all I can say is, why didn't they do that sooner?
But they made you a believer again. I think that's the important thing. You came into the season going, I'm not going to watch this ever again, and are you back on board a little bit?
Let's discuss that in our wrap up.
All right.
We'll leave a little cliffhanger of our own.
Okay.
What were your final thoughts on this episode?
I mean, I came again. I'll delve into this on the recap, but like as I said when we first started, I am hopefully optimistic, and every step of the way this season, with a few tiny little quibbles that I can look over, I've just been like, they've just proven my loyalty to be correct. And it's like I feel now about the show like I did in the height of my obsession with Lost, where I'm like, oh, just keep, like everything I came into this episode with expectation wise was either tweaked and made better, or was like, we're not going to do that. We're going to show you this. And it's like, oh God, that's way better. So just the fact that the show is ahead of me and my expectations and giving me something I didn't know I wanted. I didn't know I wanted a Godfather 2 style, like 20-minute, silent film of like Cersei fucking shit up. Like I'm like, thank God they did it that way. They could have done the traditional, like they could have taken that whole sequence and broken it up. Like, hey, we're going to show you Loras' trial. Now we're going to cut to Jon. Now we're going to cut to Daenerys. Hey, we're back again at the Sept. They're like, no. Start to finish, here it is, and it's going to be glorious. I'm just like, you guys, thank you. Thank you for that. That's all I can say.
Yeah, it was anytime they defaulted to making things more cinematic, they succeeded.
Yes.
And I know it's like, there's money constraints and all that kind of stuff, but they definitely figured out this season. I think they figured out this season with the Door episode and in the last 2 episodes how to do cinematic with personal stakes.
Yes.
And it always seemed before like it was one or the other, I guess. Well, I don't know. I'm backtracking even on what I said. But, because I think there are like good parts of like Tyrion's story in the Battle for Blackwater Bay, and, but like when you think of the 2-episode like Wildling assault on Castle Black, like I don't really remember there being any besides Ygritte dying. Mm-hmm. It just it wasn't like they were telling another story within that. It was really
Hardhome.
Or Hardhome especially, yeah.
Yeah, you're exactly right. It was either that or it was Tyrion and Pod and Bronn sitting around shooting the shit, and that was really fun, or it was like those kinds of things, but it was never both at the same time, and you nailed it. Like these last several episodes, but the Door and these last 2 specifically they struck that balance. They looked better and were executed better than we've ever seen. You could I'm sad I didn't go find a theater that was inevitably showing this tonight and just watch it in the theater, because I bet it plays so well on the big screen.
It was pretty amazing.
Well, that being said, we'll hopefully you'll join us for our season 6 recap, and it's been a fun season, man. I'm glad we started this year and not last year.
We've said that before, and I totally agree. This was the season to do it. It's been pretty cool to watch all these and have a place to talk about it.
Well, you can find me on Twitter at Taylor Trask, and you, sir, are.
I am on Twitter at HeyToddA,
and we are both online at toddandtaylor.com. Where more is going to be very soon, as well as Facebook. We got a lot of stuff coming down the pike in the next month or 2, so stay tuned to those channels for sure.
Yeah,
and it's been great. We never know how to end these. We just kind of I think we just kind of end. We just
sort of trail off. Yeah. So, but follow us on Twitter and stuff to hear about whenever we do that recap show, because we're hoping to have some special guests and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah. Don't bury the lead, man. All right.